Hey, how's it going guys? It's Scarecrow, and today I have a really cool video idea lined up for you guys. I wanted to lay out for you guys my gaming life, what I've, started playing, where I started playing, the games I used to play as a kid, my whole transition to where I am now and playing games on YouTube and all that stuff. I thought I'd lay it out for you guys and kind of take you through a trip of my early years and what I used to play, and I thought it'd be a really cool idea. So we could take a trip down memory lane with me and the old games that I used to play as a kid. Because my childhood was a lot different to what a lot of other people seem to have with Nintendo games and the original Xbox or old PS1 and stuff. My gaming experience was very different, so I thought that it'd be a fun idea for a video. Now, my first gaming experience was way back on the PS1. We didn't have many games for the PlayStation 1 way back then, but I remember one game. And lately I've tracked it down. Like, it's a game that I remember playing when I was probably 4 or 5 years old, not even that. And I only remember specific parts to it, and I tracked it down years later to finally learn the name of it, and I've even played it a few times in an emulator, and it's actually really fun. It's called Mickey Mania. It came out in 1994 for the Sony PlayStation 1, the Sega Genesis, and some of the old platforms back then. But it was basically a platformer, and I think my mom bought it for herself, and I ended up playing it a few times. And I remember it so clearly because there was so many cool, detailed missions in there. There was like a black and white old Steamboat Willie mission. There was like one set in a creepy castle like Frankenstein and Transylvania and stuff like that. There was so many like really iconic things in there, and I remember like being terrible at it, like sucking at it so bad. But my mom had completed the game, so I used just to go through and play all the levels, and that is the game that has stuck with me for years. I remember just like doing so much, just going, oh my god, this is so fun. I get to play as Mickey Mouse and all these other iconic characters, to see them like Pluto and all of that stuff. It was really cool. It kind of opened my eyes and started my burning passion to play games, because I love playing games. And since that first time, it was like, this is an entirely new world that I want to get involved in and I want to really pursue, because it was so cool to the 4 or 5 year old me that there was an entire world of like, this was like books, but even better because you got to play it rather than just read about it. Now, one thing you have to understand too is my family was heavily religious back then, so we weren't really, it's not that we weren't allowed to play games, it's just that we didn't really go out of our way to play them. Like, we had a platform to play them on every now and then, but we didn't like really encourage it. It wasn't really encouraged. Like, we didn't own a TV back then. We weren't really encouraged to watch TV or anything. We certainly didn't have internet for the longest time. And back then we were very limited in what we could do. But I was a child that loved to read books, I loved to watch movies, and once I discovered gaming, it kind of just pushed me. Like, it was like igniting a rocket. It just, boom, it was like there was so much more I could do here. So I used to play games whenever I got the chance. I was almost always playing a video game of some description. For the longest time, the only one that we really owned that I could play was Mickey Mania, and then eventually we upgraded to the PlayStation 2, and I remember the day when I got one of my favorite games for the PlayStation 2, the original Spider-Man. I remember going into a store and my dad was looking at some games, and I remember looking at all the shelves and I saw Spider-Man, and as a kid who loved comics and superheroes, the first thing goes, this looks really cool. So you pick it up and say, Dad, can I get this game? And he looked over it, and I remember him saying, yeah, it looks pretty good. Why not? So that took up like a year of my life, just playing Spider-Man, just playing the game over and over. I still have the theme song engraved in my head, and I've actually downloaded it and played it on an emulator a few times, and it's just as fun as I remember it. I always remember that I was too afraid like to actually face off against the goblin in the final mission. I never actually completed the game because I was always too afraid to to fight him in the boss battle, but it was so cool to play the game and play as Spider-Man, who is still one of my favorite comic book superheroes of all time. Back then, again, there wasn't a lot of, like, we didn't really go out looking for games. So when I asked for a game, or when I got a game for Christmas or my birthday, it was usually a Disney related one or a movie related game. So I played a lot of Donald Duck and a lot of like other movie licensed titles and stuff like that. So there wasn't really it kind of slowed down for me. I didn't really pick up the pace in terms of gaming for a long time. But one of my friends from school used to have a huge PlayStation 2 collection. So every time I went over to his house for a sleepover, we used to play PS2. PS2, and that allowed me to make some great memories and awesome times there. I remember playing The Simpsons Hit and Run so many times. I remember playing old Grand Theft Auto, just running around activating cheats, not knowing what all these things were, and like it was such an adult game, but we were just little kids running around blowing away civilians with all their shotguns and rocket launchers and getting helicopters and stuff. It used to be so much fun. Running people over in The Simpsons Hit and Run and failing all of the chase missions over and over and over. As a kid, you know, you're a lot more unburdened when you play games. It's a lot more whimsical. So I'm like, oh, look at this, that's so cool. And in your head, you imagine these games. It's almost like you imagine them in, you know, 4K, perfect, you know, resolution. In your head and in your memory, everything's a lot better when you go back and look at Grand Theft Auto. I think it was 3, San Andreas. You go back and look at them, the graphics are utterly terrible, and you wonder how you ever played them without burning your eyeballs out of your head. His collection, where he had easily like 50 PS2 games on disc, and I used to just pick one out and we'd play it for the entire day. We used to play, like, there was hunting games, the old hunting simulator games. They were so much fun as well. Hunting in the woods and exploring on like snowmobiles and stuff like that. I remember we used to play Time Splitters, which is an old PS2 classic. That game was just it was so cool. We used to run around and blow people away on those really exotic and fancy levels. Then my uncle died, actually, which was kind of an interesting time for us, and a little while later we inherited his PC, and it was by no means amazing, but it was pretty decent. So I kind of transitioned into PC gaming. Now this would have been around, you know, 9 or 10. The game that I remember playing to the point of nearly insanity was Spider-Man 3, the movie licensed game, and people say that's a terrible game, but in my mind it is just amazing. Nothing can beat Spider-Man 3. QTEs and horrible graphics and all. I kind of remember like how it ran on the PC. It probably ran terrible. But I remember doing all the boss battles and unlocking all the suits and doing the collectibles and the extra missions and trying to get it all 100% and playing the game so many times. I had every boss mission down to a T. I knew the location of so many different things. I knew what was going to happen at what moment. I knew all of the voice lines of all the characters and all the moves and stuff. That game, man, I'd love to pick it up sometime and go back and play it, because it probably could be classified as a terrible game, but back then that was so cool to me, especially running around in the black Spider-Man suit, which is still one of my favorite Spider-Man suits of all time. I remember my friend had a PC, and when I used to go over to his house, one of his older brothers had Age of Empires, which you guys don't know is a real-time strategy game, and I was obsessed with this game. Like, I remember getting a demo on a USB stick and taking it home and playing it, and it had like the first couple missions on it. It was so cool, the idea of building a civilization, collecting resources, managing towns, having unique situations, building your entire civilization from scratch, going through all the ages, unlocking units and stuff like that. It still is such a classic game. I loved that game. It unlocked so many possibilities in my mind of what gaming could do. It's like, this is so cool. Gaming, I can advance all the ages and have huge fights between Romans and Byzantines. I can have fights between Aztecs and Romans. It was so cool. I loved that time in my life so much. The next evolution from there, which was Age of Mythology, which somehow it managed to surpass that for me, because it was introduced god powers and ancient Greek gods and all of these mythical creatures, and the graphics were much more awesome, and you could cool down all these really awesome god powers out of nowhere, and there was cheats and all this really cool stuff. I sunk so many hours into that game that I used to go to bed and have like vivid dreams, like really vivid dreams of what I would do the next day and what base I would build and how I would attack a certain scenario. And like, for me, gaming was just, it was my life back then. I didn't do a whole lot of other things. Like, it was what I did so much. When I got home from school and finished homework, I was straight on there playing it. Through the holidays, I used to just play the game non-stop. My mom used to hound me all the time to get off and get fresh air and a bit of sunshine, but I was just engrossed in this new world of gaming that just got me hook, line, and sinker, and it was not letting up anytime soon. The next game that really moved me forward in terms of different genre of game was an RPG game. I remember going into an EB Games, and back then, you know how you are as a kid, it's all about the cover art. What game looks the coolest on the box? And I found this game in a red box, in a red case, which had a guy fighting a big Hydra on it, which, if you don't know, is like a 3-headed monster. Every time you cut off a head, it grows back 2 more. And I just thought, yep, that's the one. It's got a big monster on it and a guy with a sword. So I bought it not knowing much about it, and my mom allowed me to get it. And she didn't exactly agree with the game because it's an RPG, but the idea of starting out in a Greek world and having to acquire loot, and there's different rarities of items, and then you have powers and RPG mechanics and a skill tree and all these bosses and stuff like that. I never actually finished the game. I remember the boss being so freaking hard that I could never finish it, but it was a huge game too. It was like a good 20 to 30 hour game for me, and for me, like, that was entirely strange because like having a game that could last me such a long time was an entirely new process to me. Like, usually I was finished with games within a week and then it was just a matter of replaying them over and over. This one had so much replayability, it had all these quests and it had all this extra content and stuff like that. The developers actually remastered the game last year and released it, and I picked it up like instantly because this is a part of my childhood, and for me to go back to it with prettier graphics and new features and new quests and like new lands and stuff like that, it was really cool. I still am playing it actually. I still haven't finished it. It's a game that I've sunk so many hours into over the years and still continues to do me a great service today. Of course, the next step was, of course, being a child. I had to have a Pokemon game. Pokemon was all around me wherever I went. People were playing Pokemon on Nintendo systems. No matter where I went, there was Nintendo Game Boys, and then of course the Nintendo DS came out. That was a new big thing. So I saved up, I think it was $550 of my pocket money, which took me a good couple months, and I bought Pokemon Pearl for the Nintendo DS. It also came with another game, SpongeBob, it was like Drawn to Life or something like that, which was, you know, about drawing stuff on the stylus pad, which is kind of just like a gimmick, but I really enjoyed that too. But of course, the selling point was Pokemon, and I bought a huge, thick game guide for it. Like, it was a good, you know, 600-700 pages long, and it had all the Pokemon from all the regions and where to find them and all the cheat codes and where to find these items and stuff, and tactics and all this stuff. And oh my god, I played that game non-stop for so long. Wherever we went, whenever there was a chance, my Nintendo DS was always running low on charge from the amount of times that I played it. It was crazy. Like, that Nintendo served me so well, but sadly we had to move and I was forced to sell my Nintendo, and I sold it for like 50 bucks with all the games. So that was such a shame. But like, my one Pokemon experience, that's my one Nintendo experience that I've ever had, was from a Pokemon Pearl and Nintendo DS. And I still love Pokemon. I still have a chance to play it every now and then through other platforms, but that will always be the OG Pokemon in the OG generation for me. But as I said, that was around the stage that my family decided to move. We decided to pack up and move a good 700 kilometers away, which was quite interesting. So our PC kind of didn't really handle the transition very well, so it didn't really last. So I already had a really crappy laptop, but fortunately I was able to save up to buy a new game that I'd never heard of before called Star Wars Battlefront. And before I knew it, it was one of my new favorite games. Running around, destroying droids and playing as the clones, which are still my favorite thing. I am so excited for the new Star Wars Battlefront 2 just because it has Phase 1 clone troopers in there. My favorite clone troopers, like my favorite. Who cares about the Jedi? I don't really care about them. I just want to be able to play as a trooper. In my mind, they are the epitome of cool in their white armor and their big huge weapons facing against all the droids and stuff like that. I'm so excited for that. But as a kid, Star Wars was all around you. You had Darth Vader and people talking about the prequels. The prequels weren't that long ago back then. And of course, that game just blew my mind. Huge scale battles, you know, you got to get an 80-80, which was nuts. You used to have secret modes where you could unlock aliens. There was a mode where there was only Jedi against Jedi. There was Galactic Conquest where you could take over and conquer planets. And like, the laptop I played it on was so shitty that it could barely run it, and yet I got so much fun from that game that I still to this day will go back and play it every now and then just for the fun of experiencing it again. It is still in my mind the best Star Wars game that I've ever played, and probably the best Star Wars game that has ever been released so far. But since my laptop was so crappy, there wasn't a whole lot I could actually play. And I played a lot of Lego games like Lego Indiana Jones, but there wasn't really a whole lot I could do. I remember buying Ghost Recon 2, Ghost Recon Advanced Warfighter 2, and that was about the limit of my gaming experience for then, which was really cool. I had a tactical shooter, and oh my god, the rage that that game brought out in me. I still hesitate to go back to it because it's a really good game, but by golly, it was hard. You had to manage a squad, manage a you know, all their loadouts and their tactics and how they would react and how they would approach a mission and stuff like that. And oh my god, it blew my mind, but at the same time it was so difficult that I still struggled with it so much. Like the missions, I remember failing at them so much. I had never raged at a game as much as I had raged at that game. It wasn't called a military simulator for nothing. It was quite a hard game for its time, and it still is to this day. When I go back to it and play to it, I still struggle to do well in that game, but it is a load of fun when you can pull it off. Still a very good first-person shooter experience. And then we actually moved again. This was like a good 2-3 years after we moved. We decided to move again, and we moved to a place that had very limited power. We were kind of just like almost semi-camping, so I didn't really have access to the internet or anything like that. It was a very rough time for us. Luckily, we did have some power from a generator, so we could charge our laptop every now and then. And I decided that was a great time to get into the Assassin's Creed series. So I got a bundle pack of Assassin's Creed 1 and Assassin's Creed 2, and I played Assassin's Creed 1 a bunch. It was a really fun game. It wasn't the best game I'd ever played, but the idea of being an assassin and going around and killing all your targets and fighting in the old Jerusalem times and stuff like that was really cool, in the Crusades and stuff. But the game that really interested me, the game that I really wanted to play, was Assassin's Creed 2, and this was back when Ubisoft had the brilliant idea of introducing online-only Uplay DRM, which sucked because we didn't have a whole lot of internet. Like, we had very limited internet, so I couldn't play Assassin's Creed 2 for the longest time until they removed that, and I was finally able to play it, and that game blew my mind once again. It once again expanded my horizons of what to be able to expect from a video game. For once, I had a protagonist that I could relate to and that I could really love. Like, this was a character that I could invest myself in 100%, and going through Italy, taking out targets, and going through his really tragic tale. Ezio Auditore da Firenze is still my favorite character from a video game franchise ever, and I don't think they will ever be replaced just because of his place in my childhood. And I read all of the Assassin's Creed books, so I knew like the extended lore of the universe and stuff like that, so I love his character so much. It sticks with me a lot, and I don't think he'll ever be replaced as my favorite character. And then we moved again, another 18 months later. About that time we moved again to a rental house. Like, I've moved so many times in my life that it's crazy, but we moved to a rental house, and eventually I ended up getting a gaming PC. I begged and scrimped and saved, and my parents ended up helping me out quite a bit, and I bought a $2,000 gaming computer in 2013, and kind of got heavily invested into games. Then I was like, right, this beast of a machine can handle just about anything I can throw at it. Let's get some really good games. So it started out pretty tame, you know, considering on the Assassin's Creed games, Assassin's Creed 3, and Splinter Cell was another huge series. It's actually my favorite franchise of all time, Splinter Cell. I love it, like stealth games. I'm gonna have a video coming out sometime soon about stealth games and why I enjoy them so much and my favorite ones. But that franchise to me, sneaking around in the dark, being a super secret agent, you know, taking out targets and operating in the dark and doing all these super stealthy missions, that was like my idea of a perfect dream game. So I love the Splinter Cell series so much. It's such a shame they didn't really have any information revealed at this year's E3, but Splinter Cell to me is one of my favorite franchises. I'm still waiting for the next game. I love Blacklist to death. That was one of the games that that was actually the first game that I ever pre-ordered and got a special edition of that game. I was just getting into YouTube that time, around 2013, 2014, and I remember watching the first ever person that I ever subscribed to was a stealth gameplay guide YouTuber by the name of CenterStrain01, and I used to love his content. I still do. He still has an awesome channel that I support very much. If you guys want to check it out, I'll leave his link in the description, because he does awesome gameplay videos and awesome guides and walkthroughs for stealth games. He is an awesome stealth gamer, which really appealed to me back then, because I used to play a lot of Assassin's Creed and Splinter Cell. But he played a couple matches of Call of Duty Ghosts, and then he played the Call of Duty Ghosts campaign, and I was like, this story looks so freaking awesome. So I forced myself to stop watching after, I think it was like his second episode, and I said, right, let's go and buy Call of Duty Ghosts. So I went and bought Call of Duty Ghosts and played the campaign for about 2 weeks. I got all the achievements, I got all of, like, I played it on the hardest difficulty, I did the campaign to absolute death, and then transitioned over into the multiplayer, and I didn't suck at the multiplayer. Like, I did decent, and kickstarted my competitive FPS like adventure. Then it was like, right, I'm competing against people from, you know, all across the country in an online environment, shooting guns and stuff like that, score streaks, and there's really cool attachments, and you can customize your soldier. And it was one of the most like awesome experiences I can ever have. Like introducing myself to COD like blew my mind to what FPS, like competitive FPS shooters could be. And I know a lot of people, Call of Duty Ghosts wasn't very well received, but it was my first multiplayer experience of just about any kind. So for me, that game has a very, very nostalgic place in my heart of being the first Call of Duty, the first FPS game that I really got into in the multiplayer scene. And I like the fact that I was able to look like I didn't even notice a lot of the flaws in the game. I just accepted them, and that was like a really, really unique perspective for me. Looking back now, you know, I'd be able to point out 100 different things wrong with the game, but for me playing it then, there was like, oh, there's so many weapons, they all do different damage. And then I got into watching Call of Duty YouTubers like Ali and T Martin and all of those guys, and it was an entirely new thing, having a community to really partake in and all of this stuff. That really kickstarted my Call of Duty career and got me into, you know, watching YouTubers and Call of Duty YouTubers, which have then, of course, you know, ignited my passion for wanting to be a Call of Duty YouTuber, which is where I am today. I remember Call of Duty Ghosts for being an awesome game that I enjoyed so much, and I still do. Like, if I could still play the multiplayer to that game, I would go back and play it just because it has so much nostalgia factor for me. And that's pretty much up to where I am now. Like, I play anything and everything these days. If I like a game, if I think I like a game, then I'll buy it and I'll play it. Like, I have no qualms over playing any genre of game. I have games from so many different franchises. Like, I don't limit myself at all, and I'm planning to get so many more this year and next year, because there was so many awesome games announced at E3 that this year is going to be really awesome for games. Next year is going to be really awesome for games. Just, I like the diversity that I've got in my gaming life at the moment. I like that if I go into my Steam library, it's not just all FPS games or stuff like that. I've got some really, really varied games that are all unique and special to me because they've all given me different experiences and really, really cool moments. I like them all for different reasons. They all have really cool characters and stories that are also different and varied from each other. I like that if someone else found my Steam library, there would be something in there to please them. I have games from just about every genre known to man. I am not limited by one genre. Call of Duty is really, really fun to me, but I'm no means defined by that series. That series is just one book on the shelf of many, many, many games for me. So yeah. Anyway guys, that pretty much wraps it up for me. I just want to say that after E3, I'm really, really looking forward to Anthem that's coming out later this year, I think, or it might be early next year. I have Destiny 2 lined up for the end of the year. I have Battlefront 2 lined up for the end of the year. I have, of course, Call of Duty lined up for the end of the year. I'm hoping that we'll hear something about a Borderlands 3 sometime this year, maybe early next year. That'll be coming up. Splinter Cell surely has another game on the way sometime soon. Want to hear some information about that. Like I said, this year is a really huge year for games for me. I've got so many on the horizon I'm really, really looking forward to. So it's going to be a really, really cool time. Like, it's a really cool time to be a gamer in the modern age. There are so many games from so many different genres to appreciate right now. Anyway guys, that's going to wrap it up for this video. That is my gaming life. Let me know down in the comment section below, what's yours? I'm actually really interested to hear. What did you grow up playing? What's your favorite game franchise of all time? Do you have a favorite character? Do you have a preferred platform? How big's your library and all of that stuff? Go on, let me know all about it down in the comment section below. I really, really want to hear about it. It's nice to hear how varied my audience is and who actually watches my videos, what background they're from, what they grew up playing, what system they grew up on, and stuff like that. It's really, really cool, because if gaming is one thing, it's very, very diverse. There is no set standard of a gamer. There is no definitive gamer. There is just a bunch of people from so many backgrounds that enjoy so many different types of games, and that's why I love gaming to death. The communities behind the games make up half of the gaming experience themselves. It's so cool to be able to interact with them and talk about games with other people and why you like them and stuff like that, and talk about stories and what these games have meant to you and what experiences you've got from them and stuff. I'm going to be playing games until the day I die, and that's 100% certain. I will never outgrow gaming, and gaming hopefully will never outgrow me. So yeah. Anyway guys, thank you so much for watching. If you have enjoyed, don't forget to hit that like button, subscribe for more, and I shall see you, beautiful people, in the next video.